Well, hello. So I have, between this video and last, I haven't really done much, but I did teleport this from down over there, if I remember correctly, all the way up to here, so if I need to ever work down, I can have plenty of room. I used a structure block. They're actually really intuitive now. They used to not be. Well, when they first came out at least. So basically, I've done a fair bit, but at the same time, done not much. I basically, because of how their inputs work, you have the hundreds, tens, ones. Yes, it's inverted to normal, but because flip side, obviously. So this thing is the. This is where we end the last episode. And this is where we are, this episode, or at least start of. I might, I'll upload this by itself. So this is the one. This is the tens place. Basically, I decided to treat every single one together by themselves, which this is sort of what this was. I was sort of planning on working this way a bit, but I ended up keeping it pretty compact. It only really went over 2 that way, and didn't move it all over here really at all. That's just a counting placeholder because 10's place has 0 at the start, so when I was double checking everything through, I would always go 0, 1s, all the way through as a test. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't actually tell you what this is. This converts the normal single digit equivalent of the number to the tens equivalent of the number in binary. So 20, 30, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. I think we're set to nothing at the moment. Yep. Basically, if it's hard to explain, I might come up with might have a thing on the screen at the moment. So what I'm doing in the redstone is what I'm going to be showing you here. 10, the decimal number, which is I understand the annoyance considering decimal and binary, some of the numbers look similar to each other. That's the decimal number, binary number, and because of we're doing on the left, the lowest number, highest number, that's how 10 would be represented back on the world. So, since the single digits, 1, 2, 3s, binary form add up to a 4-digit number. They would be X, Y, Z, K denoted here, despite only having 1 or 0, technically. So, we'll use just generic algebra rules. Because the first one is 0, we can just assume 0. Oh yes, also that X, Y, Z starting from the lowest, like that 0 would be that X, that 1 would be the Y, that 1 would be the, not that one, that O there would be the Z, and that 1 would be the K, so going in that order side of things. So you'd have X, Y, Z, K, because it's 1 times essentially the tens place, you have 0, 0, 0 times X, sort of plus, and the X, Y, Z, because of if you were timesing by 1, you just state the number and move it by the number of places needed. So basically, you'll see what I'm talking about when the X, that X has to be added to that Z, and that Y needs to be added to that K, and because how addition works, you propagate it through. So you can have that one, those two are both ones. You would have one, you have two ones here, sort of thing. You'd have 3 ones here, which would add a 1 here, which could an extra one. Which your Z could be powered, and then your K could also have something coming from both directions. But we'll discuss that later. So that's the logic behind what we're doing. Back to me earlier explaining what actually redstone I did. I gave myself plenty of time to edit that in. So you can see that because of how it adds it together, only that number needs to add to that number, and that number needed to add to this number, and then equivalent outputs because of how it lined up. So this one came straight through, this one came straight through, but they had detours off. So this one is for when it's added to this one, to this grey one back here. The grey one that was here originally, but because I ran out, I had to finagle some room in. I had to move it because room mainly. So that comes out to here with that added to it. Then because of how adding works, you have to propagate everything. So that sort of propagates to here, which has an input from the other adding, which is that adding to here. So I really shouldn't be talking you through this much. Basically, and then adding it together again. You don't have to copy me exactly. Basically, I'm just trying to show you the logic of mine. Okay, that flashed, so it's not meant to do that. But then the orange is because essentially the orange means that I brought it out at a point before the end of the pinks. Despite some of the pinks going longer, that's because I hadn't made up my mind at that point. So that's what the orange meant. Even though this isn't really meant to be orange by that logic, just let's go with it. So that's adding for that place. And this thing here is actually quite interesting because of how both the only numbers that I think affect that are 90, 70, and 80. So the bottom row here. Yeah, so 70's version from this one, get powering, comes from here. Because of how 70 and 1980 are programmed, or how their binaries work, does it have 8 on it? Yes, it does. It sort of has 6 for a second. It means that this never actually gets powered properly, so you don't actually need to send it there. This thing powering this is because that no signal ever ends up here at all for 7 and 8, or 8 and 9. So yes, that does cut off, and not technically meant to cut it off based off prior knowledge, but it can because it doesn't. Matter and 9's similar effect. It doesn't, since no signals ever come into here for those high numbers, the crossing of these wires doesn't actually matter. Yeah, the order is just because I didn't want to have a situation where I had to refunnel them already, or refunnel them when I need them for the next step, rather than refunnelling them first. One thing I had to be careful of, making sure this didn't get too high, so that when cloned up, this hits it. So that this doesn't get affected, so that I can just clone this up without having to rework it. I had to be careful of that. I got within 1 block. I've got 0 blocks of wiggle room. If I brought this up 1 more block, I would be basically stuck. Yeah, I think because of what's under it, I'd be stuck. So that was very close. So, yeah. I will be uploading 100. The 100's equivalent of converting as soon as I get around to it. Goodbye.